Hello, my name is Kristen Bestavros, and I am a data science major, and this is my Keystone presentation, a computational approach to understanding political polarization. I came up with this project over the summer while doing research, and I'm very excited to show it to you all. So my project is based primarily on a political psychology paper about the mechanics of political polarization, which provides a conceptual framework for understanding political polarization and argues that polarization is a result of not only external factors like political messaging, but also personality factors. The most important personality factors that they identify in the paper are ego justification, which is your drive to have a consistent internal belief system, group justification, which is your tendency to conform to in-group expectations, and system justification, which is your tendency to conform to support or oppose the status quo. External factors also play a role, and the communication factors that they identify in the paper as being most important are channel factors, which is the medium through which the message is delivered, source factors, which is where the message is coming from, and message factors, which is the actual content of the message and how emotional or logical it is. So the goal of my project is to better understand political polarization by simulating it, and essentially I do this by turning the paper that I just explained into a working computational simulation of a person's beliefs and how they change over time. Simulation is a good fit for this because it's really hard to find real-world data about people's real beliefs and isolate how they respond to single messages. So having a model allows us to control for a lot of different variables. Now I'm going to explain how my model works, and to start, I want to make sure we're all on the same page about how I'm defining the political spectrum. This is how I'm defining it, and it's a 2D plane with social issues on the x-axis, with liberal stances on social issues to the left and conservative stances on the right, and economic issues on the y-axis, with conservative beliefs up and liberal beliefs down. So people with conservative beliefs would fall in the first quadrant, which is right and up, and people with liberal beliefs fall in the third quadrant, which is left and down. Everyone has a position on this graph which represents their beliefs, and over time, being exposed to political messages, their beliefs can change over time. So for the purposes of my model, a message is anything from a headline to a social media post, and they're defined by several key traits, which you can see here, but the most important one is the message direction, which is where the message falls on the political spectrum, which I just explained, and it's basically the stance that the message is trying to convince you of. For the purposes of my project, messages are artificially generated, so I'm not using actual headlines or social media posts, but the generated messages are meant to replicate those sorts of messages. So a few things can happen when a person or an agent is exposed to a message. In this case, we have someone in the first quadrant, conservative with conservative beliefs, being exposed to a message in a slightly different part of the quadrant. And the person can either move towards the message if they're convinced by it, or if they are repulsed by the message, they can be pushed in the opposite direction. What's most likely to happen in this case, since the message's belief vector and the agent's belief vector are fairly well aligned, is the agent will move towards the message, but not all the way. So that's what happens when a person is exposed to a single message. But to analyze my model, I decided to formulate a bunch of scenarios, which are a sequence of messages, which are meant to reflect a certain real-world phenomenon. So in a given scenario, we have a bunch of messages, and we expose an agent with certain beliefs and certain personalities to each of these messages in order, and we record where they end up. So what we're interested in is the difference between where they started and where they ended up. And that difference can tell us a lot if we run the scenario multiple times with thousands of different combinations of personalities, and we can see patterns emerge. So I got some very interesting results, and these are two of the more interesting scenarios. I ran a bunch of scenarios, but these are two of the more interesting ones. So in these graphs, the different colors represent different starting points. So so the blue represents people who started on the left with liberal views, and red represents people who started on the right with conservative views. And the darker the color, the more extreme they were when they started. So basically, each color has thousands of different agents with different personality types being exposed to the same scenario, but each color is a different starting point. And on the left, we have a scenario where the first messages were very extreme and very polarizing, but then there was a depolarization stage where the agent was exposed to messages that were not very polarizing. And despite the depolarization stage, there's not a lot of deviation away from the central line. So it's very it's very linear. You can see it's basically just a line, and there's not a lot of deviation from parties. Whereas the scenario on the right we have was a bunch of messages that were had a lot of variety in beliefs. So the messages were all over the place in the graph, but they did not have a lot of in-group, out-group hostility. So the messages were highly logical. They weren't attacking the out-group, and as a result of all of these things, you see a lot more deviation from the middle line, and even some bleed over into other quadrants, which was really interesting to see, since those quadrants are not aligned beliefs, and it's unexpected to see people end up there. And another interesting result we found was that if you filter by personality, you find some interesting patterns. So if you'll recall, ego justification was one of the personality traits that the paper identified, and it determines how likely you are to seek out affirming information. So people with low ego justification are more okay holding conflicting beliefs and will not go out of their way to pursue affirming information. Whereas people with high ego justification feel very strongly about having a consistent internal belief system and will seek out affirming information. And you can see that on people with low ego justification on the left have a similar distribution to everyone else. But on the right, people with high ego justification, even the people who started near the middle, ended up further away from the center over time after being exposed to messages. So that sort of shows how people who seek out affirming information, even if they start out with very neutral views, will be pushed away from the center. So these results are very exciting, but there are still certain aspects of the model that could be improved. For example, right now, the channel factors, like the medium through which the message is delivered, just scales how influential the message is, but I would like to introduce unique logic for each channel type. Additionally, there is research that shows that people on the political left and the political right process messages differently. So I would like to introduce introduce unique logic for people on the left and right. And additionally, I would like to expand this model into a multi-agent model so that it could be useful for policy modeling. And yeah, that's what I have.
Nice presentation. I think you might have answered my question at the end there. So I noticed with the different headlines that you had, you did have Fox News, et cetera. So the organization that's putting out the headline does factor into the model right now, or does not?
It not so much. It's represented by other things. So like the traits that a message has are sort of general. It's not like this came from Fox News, but it is like this message has these traits which you might associate with Fox News, for example. But yeah, I don't have any specific logic for specific sources of information right now. Yeah.
Thanks.
Kristen, congratulations on the project. This is a sort of a non-scientific question. Doing this kind of research, I wonder whether at the end of it, at least so far, you feel more optimistic or less based on your findings about, I don't know, political dialogue?
I don't know. I think I go between being more and less optimistic. But overall, I think that what I took away from this project is just that I feel like I understand better why people hold certain beliefs and the instincts that people have about politics. And it's not just about like what you're being exposed to. It's also about like how strongly you feel about things and how like your tendency to behave a certain way, which is just your personality. And I think that that's really important to understand. So yeah.
I have a question. You said that every color was a particular type, like very extreme or very liberal, etc. But the blobs are sort of more dispersed than a particular point. So did every one of the black started in a point and then started moving away? Same thing for the darker blue, etc. Or are these random starting points around the main, whatever you decided is one of these positions?
Yeah, so every color started in the exact same spot. So, for example, the light blue people started about here, whereas the dark blue people started over here. And it's the exact same spot for everyone, but every agent has different personality types. So even though they start in the same spot and they're exposed to the exact same messages, that's why you see the diffusion away, because it's dependent on the personalities.
So for example, the orange and light orange diffusion is somehow more than the others. There's something interesting about how they diffuse even if they don't cross. Nobody from the red really turned to the blue.
Yeah, although it is fun that over here there's a guy who from the light blue who ended up all the way over here. So like that sort of change does happen, but it is mostly yeah, and you can't see it, but there's a matching guy who started light red and ended up all the way over there. So it's. But you don't see that in this scenario, so that also shows how the messages are impacted. Yeah.
So my question, and it's kind of related to this one. So see, there's like very discrete colors here. So there's light, medium, and dark of both blue and red. And you said that they start at like particular points. So basically, does that mean that like you kind of modeled each agent as having like like they are specifically like neutral left, moderate left, extreme left? Do you think there could be room in your model to make it more continuous? Like this person is, like this agent is more left than like this other agent, and so it's like kind of just distributed on an entire line.
Yeah, I could do that, but doing that would make it a lot harder to see things like where you end up.
Right.
Contrast to where you start.
I see what you mean. Yeah.
So that's why I did it that way.
Okay.
And the other reason I did it that way is because how extreme you are impacts how you process messages. Right. So the reason you don't see any people from the extreme categories going really much further towards the middle is because it's really hard to convince people who are very extreme to change their mind. It requires very specific circumstances for them to become unextreme. So, and so that's why I had the 3 categories on each side instead of just having a general starting spot for both. And yeah, I could make it continuous, but then visualizing it and evaluating it would be a lot harder. So, yeah.
All right, thank you, Kristen.